This is the Midnight on Earth podcast with your host, Jake Weaver. Engineered by Cedric Swan.
Hey everybody, I'm in Portland, Oregon, at one of Portland's most beautiful parks. It's a wonderful day, it's blue skies outside, and I'm setting up a social distortion field so I can be safe from my wonderful guest, the herbalist, the owner of the company Vital Force Herbs. Her name is Brynn Anderson. Hello, Brynn.
Hi, how's it going?
So we're here on this podcast today, on this beautiful day in Portland, Oregon, to talk about something that grows pretty freely in the Northwest, herbs. I mean, would you say that herbs themselves do really well in the fertile Northwest soil?
I would definitely say so. I would say that herbs love the Northwest. They love the rain. They love the company of each other. Yeah, I would say so.
So you feel like in other parts of the country, they don't grow as well. Here in the Northwest, here in Oregon, they actually grow a little bit better.
I would say there are herbs that are very at home in the Northwest that would not care to grow elsewhere, just as there are herbs elsewhere that would not care to grow here. However, here I find them to be growing up against each other until there isn't any space in between, whereas when you're in the desert or the mountains, there's more space and things are more spread out, things are more hardy with less water.
So we're here to talk about herbalism today. And for those of you out there that are wondering kind of what we're talking about, yes, they're the herbs that go in your food. Of course, they're cooking herbs, but we're here talking about wonderful medicinal herbs. Hey, not just marijuana. That's not Brynn's thing. Well, I don't know if it is or not, but what I do know is that she has a company called Vital Force Herbs, and we're talking about the medicinal herbs that have almost magical powers in their way that they can heal the human body. I've been a proponent of herbal medicines for a really long time. I've used tinctures to treat multiple illnesses and various ailments I've experienced over the years. And I'm all for it. I feel like it's highly beneficial to supplement your, medicinal situation with herbal medicines. And I'm going to let Brynn talk about this a little bit more. So tell me a little bit more about the concept of herbal medicine.
All right. Thanks for having me today, by the way. Herbal medicine. So yes, the herbs that you cook with and the herbs that are used for medicine are one and the same. All herbs are medicinal in some form or another. Herbs work on a completely different level than other forms of medicines, especially in our modern society. They work with the body and they work to find the root of dis-ease or disharmony within the body and to correct the imbalances. So rather than putting a Band-Aid on something or saying, I have a headache, I would just want to stop this headache, it's looking to what is the root of that headache. And
Wait, did you say the root of that headache?
The roots of that headache, yes.
Well, the thing is, common sense would tell us that natural medicine has been the primary practice medicine throughout human history. The chemical medicine, the modern scientific medicine that we have in the 19th, 20th, 21st centuries is a little bit new in the time spectrum as compared to these herbal medicines that have been around, since time immemorial.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about the history of herbalism. Where are the earliest places where herbal medicine shows itself in human history?
As far back as history is available to be accessed, I suppose. They talk about it in Egyptian history. They talk about it all over the world. Really, the Western world is one of the places where herbalism took a break. It, has been, I think, around for as long as plants and people have been interacting. But through, in the 1500s, there was a man named Paracelsus who was an alchemist and herbalist, and he kind of rekindled some ideas that I think were probably around, but maybe, had faded for a bit. And he definitely was a fiery person who had some new ideas that he brought forth to, sort of stoke the fires of the Western herbal tradition.
And Paracelsus, we're talking
Paracelsus,
ancient
Paracelsus.
Paracelsus.
Mm-hmm.
That you're talking ancient Greece. Is that his era? Where did he arrive from?
Why do you have to put me on the spot with that? I don't.
It's okay if you don't know. It's fine.
I do know. Actually, I had
prehistory.
Yes, I do know, and yes, I do believe he was in that area. But I don't want to. I don't want to be wrong, so that's why.
So how far back? 10,000
years,
we're talking, 30,000
well,
years?
he was in the 1500s. So
1500s.
He was in the 1500s.
So, but we know that herbal medicine has been practiced for a really long time. We're talking ancient Greece, ancient Egypt.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I was saying.
India, or Ayurveda, that would be way before the 1500s.
I was getting to that.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, I was just kind of leading backwards from our modern Western traditions. But yes, Ayurveda in India, Chinese medicine, Unani Tib in the Middle East. Herbs are spoken of throughout the Bible. Yes, herbs are part of ancient history. I definitely think they're recorded as long as humans have been on Earth.
So why do you think that herbs, plants that grow on the earth, in the ground, just like every other plant, tree, how are they able to have specific effects on the human body in such a direct way? Because you hear about these things. For instance, you have a product that's a liver. I believe it's called Luna's Liver Lover. It's a liver cleanse. So somehow you were able to distinguish, or you were taught from someone else that was able to distinguish somewhere in history, that these specific herbs had a specific effect on certain parts of the body. So how is that possible? What is the thinking behind that? How do you think that works?
I think that works by the herbs communicating with the vital force of the body. I think that there are herbs that have more of a communication with parts of the body, an affinity. That's the word I was looking for different parts of the body than others. There are herbs that will work on all parts of the bodies in different ways. Rosemary is wonderful for the liver. Rosemary is also wonderful for brain support. So, but there are certain herbs that, yes, have, I think, a direct connection.
But how is that possible?
How is that possible? So through a few different ways. Herbs have, on a scientific level, they have constituents that work with the body's molecules and body systems. On an energetic level, I think that there's a stimulation or a relaxation that happens based on different energetics in the body, based on tone, based on hot, dry, wet, cold, all of those kinds of things that are imbalances within the body, which is where disease begins. And
so do you think that, sorry to interrupt, but do you think that do you think that there's, to me, the way I look at it, and I see the human body, and then I look at the earth, and you see all these herbs that have specific functions on the human body, it definitely indicates to me some sort of intelligent design. So I'm wondering, do you feel like there's some spiritual force that put all these different herbs here that had all these different effects so the human being could maintain this connection? How do you feel about that? With the earth, how do you feel about that?
Absolutely. I think that the earth and all of the plants and the humans on it are all part of one organism, and they're all designed to communicate and support one another. I think that plants have a direct relationship to humans in their connection to the earth. I think that that is really the most natural and really simplistic way for humans to maintain their vitality and health is through connecting with not only the plants of the earth, the elements of the earth, the forces of nature that we are a greater part of.
It does. Isn't it interesting, though, that people don't notice that, hey, isn't it interesting we're on this planet and there's these plants and every single one has a specific function for our body? Isn't that a little strange? Like, why don't people notice that? Do you think people should notice that more? Obviously herbalists notice. People that are psychedelic or free thinking or just really open, they've just been exposed to this information. They know it. But like, how do people not notice that? And then from there kind of, speculate or, kind of figure out in a way that there's this design, there's this some sort of design that's reflective of the human body. Why don't people notice that?
Well, I think it's a few things. I think that we are not taught in our current society that that plants communicate with us. That plants are alive. You keep your house plant alive, but it's a different kind of alive. Yes, it's alive, but not the kind of living being that I would say most herbalists would believe that plants are, that there is that intelligence there. And so I think that humans feel so, and they're brought up to feel separated from that. If they felt connected, if I'm looking at this, beautiful oak tree right here across from me, and I felt connected to that oak tree as a being and as a source of support, reciprocal support for each other, that it would be natural for me to communicate with that tree and find out, what kind of relationship I have with that tree. And I might learn from that tree that its bark is full of tannins and that it could really help me tonify some tissues. That may be something I could learn from that oak. I may learn that it's really great shade around 3:00 in the afternoon. I may, various levels. So I think that that's where it starts, is our connection to the living world, and also our disconnection with our bodies, that our bodies, we need to go see a professional to figure out what's wrong with our arm, rather than knowing our arm intimately and knowing when something feels off with our arm and knowing what needs to be adjusted about that arm in order for it to feel balanced again.
So you feel like herbs can contribute to some kind of like a intuitive health situation where you're so connected with yourself that you're able to distinguish your various ailments on the fly, and then you have your herbal toolbox to treat those wounds.
Well, I would say that when you start working with herbs, it's a completely different system. Like I used the example before, you aren't going to take something and your headache goes away in 30 minutes. It's a slower process. It's a more dedicated process. And it's all about noticing, and it's all about observation. So if you have something that's a long-term condition or something that's cyclical, then you're going to be working with herbs and your other health practices, such as sleep and nutrition and basic nutrients and your diet and all of these things. And then you're going to notice, what makes me feel better? What makes me feel worse? Is it better in the morning? Is it, always at midnight? And those are the kinds of things that you then start, slightly moving and tweaking within yourself to find your balance. And then when you find that balance through that observation of knowing, like, I'm perfectly capable being. Like I have a vital force inside of myself. I have the earth as part of myself that's working with me. Then I can hop back into balance. And the things that throw me off balance, then then we move and sway and figure out how to get back into balance. It's not just a Band-Aid or a patch that fixes us.
Right. So you have a company. It's called Vital Force Herbs, and you have an incredible line of various blends that you created yourself. And I've noticed that they're also crystal infused, which is very rare. I feel like it's, you'll have to tell me about why crystal infusion, what it does. But tell me where your interest in herbalism began. So how you have this company now, Vital Force Herbs. Where did it all start? Where did your interest in herbs begin?
It started in the very beginning as a child, in my own yard and in the yard of my grandmother's. That was my place to be. That was my wonderland. And I feel like plants were always alive and communicating with me from that point on. And I think it took a little bit to remember that, because I had that really deep start. My grandmothers and my mother were not herbalists, but they loved their gardens, and they were very much into the beauty of their gardens, which is a medicine just as much as anything else. And so I learned to appreciate that, and that having a garden and having plants around you was an essential part of your emotional and mental health, and that was a solace to seek when things were stressful, or a place to play and imagine, all that. So that was the beginning.
So you were sensitive to it early on. You felt the energy of the plants. You probably couldn't put it into words then, but you felt what you would probably say now is the plant consciousness. You felt some sort of interaction with the plant consciousness, and you probably felt like, and I know I'm probably you have to tell me if I'm off course, but it seems like you felt like you were communicating with the plants as if they were like pets, or mice or squirrels that
or
you would
just
see.
friends. Yeah,
Friends.
Sure,
Okay.
sure. Just like the squirrels. It's like, hey, Mr. Pete the squirrel. Hey, Rosemary the
Rosemary the rosemary.
Rosemary the rosemary. Exactly. Yeah, there was a little oak grove behind my grandmother's house that if I went there now, it was probably not even a half acre of, a couple rows of oak trees. But to me as a small child, it seemed like this huge forest where a deer, a fox could pop out of, it was alive and breathing, and definitely influenced me for sure.
So then from there, you moved on, you grew up, you became an adult, and you found yourself, I'm sure, existing somewhat in counterculture, and there seemed to be a deep resonance with the herbal community and the counterculture. Essentially, people going to jam band, hippie shows, people going to reggae shows, people going to, obviously, natural health expos. People that were really on that kind of exploratory mindset seemed to resonate with the herbal community.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I think that kind of thread from childhood pulled me through the whole time, because it was something that I found again as a teenager. Someone gave me a Rodale's Guide to Herbs book, and I devoured the whole thing. And then moving on as an adult to the Northwest, the herb culture was alive and well here, and that immediately pulled me in.
Do you feel like the Northwest has a very strong herbal community?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I think it does.
Okay. So being in the Northwest, you felt the resonance, the community, you felt like it inspired you to pursue herbalism more.
For sure, because that was, it was, I met people every day that were interested in plants or making medicine from plants. The little local co-ops all were filled with these sweet little bottles with little labels on them that I loved, and they were full of magical plants. It was all a really neat calling. And yes, I just to touch on your counterculture music, absolutely. And I think that's just another facet of that, is that music is another medicine that is part of the earth and part of our life here and part of our health and well-being. And music and herbs go hand in hand together. I really think that they attract that same vein of human that's looking for that deeper purpose.
Well, let me tell you, when I listen to jazz,
You want to take herbs?
when I'm at a Grateful Dead derivative concert,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm at any jam band concert, I make sure and have herbs.
There you go.
You know, because people don't realize that, you know, where I live in Oregon, it's legal, people, okay? Just FYI. People don't realize that cannabis is, in fact, just another herb.
It's true. It is true. And some herbs speak louder than others. I would say all herbs are psychoactive. All herbs are entheogenic and can connect you to God or source or whatever your spiritual connection is. I think they all have that capability. Some speak louder and others are, you have to do a little more digging, a little more work to form a relationship with them.
And then you look at alcohol with beer, and people don't realize that beer, from an herbalist perspective, is actually a hop tincture. Would you say that, or what would you say?
Well,
because it is a herb. I mean,
yeah.
Herbs, the hops that are used to make the beer are an herb. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
yes, if there's hops in there, then yes, you are getting somewhat of
something.
Yes, no, it is. It's true. It's like a hop. It's like a, with the yeast and all of that, it's almost like a concoction of yeast and vinegars and water and alcohol making this tincture sort of medicine. But yes, and that's why beer that has a high hop content, like I think it's, I'm not a beer person so much. I think it's porters or something maybe that have a high hops. They make you sleepy. IPAs maybe. Okay. So they make you sleepy. Well, hops is a really wonderful sedative and it works on that level. So yeah.
And that's an herb. And it really is. So herbs in a way are all around us. They're just repackaged, distilled, extracted in such a way that they are then something else. And then when we access that with our definition, with our consciousness, we're not seeing it as the herb that it actually is, which is so amazing. Just another plant helping us. And most of our conventional medicines are herbal based. Wouldn't you say? Isn't aspirin or some of those kind of commercial medicines herbal based in a way?
Well, aspirin is a synthetic form of salicylic acid, which is found in cottonwood trees and willow trees. There's a whole family of trees that are high in salicylic acid, and plants as well. Meadowsweet. There's a few others, and that's a really interesting whole thing because pharmaceuticals are mostly, yes, all based of plant derivatives, but they often take one constituent. Like if you were to take an aspirin, you would need to drink an ungodly amount of willow tea to get the amount in an aspirin. I don't even think you could do it. It's so bitter,
Right.
and it's
So
not.
much.
You wouldn't be able to do it. So it's not about. But yet you could use some of those herbs for a headache type like situation or inflammatory situation. But I think what pharmaceuticals don't take into account is the synergy of that entire intelligence of the plant.
Right. The holistic approach. You're seeing
the whole plant, not just the curcumin from the turmeric or the salicylic acid from the willow. It's about how that whole plant communicates with your whole body.
But I think it's so interesting that these commercial medicines, which over time have demonized in a lot of ways these natural medicines and really pushed them to the side, when you look at them under the microscope, you see that it's all derivatives of these herbs that they're trying to hide. Now, it's aspirin, it's this trademark thing, but at the end of the day, you strip it down to its roots, right? The roots. And it's just another herb, which is so funny. So it seems, though, I would say within the last 20 years that there's been a marked increase in the acceptance of herbs as a treatment for various ailments. Would you say that's correct?
Definitely. Yeah, a huge increase in interest. And I think, that it's a twofold where there's, I think that, humans are naturally becoming more curious because there's a need. I think that there's a calling inside of us to reconnect with the earth. And there's a calling inside of us that, however deep it is, that like, hey, we're here for each other and we can do this. And so there it might be like, oh wow, I think I'm going to read more about turmeric or whatever it is. And then there's, you know, the marketing of, okay, this is popular now, or we found this one constituent in this plant, let's, you know, blow it up, and it's in all the health food stores and all the magazines, and then those kind of elements play off each other. But ultimately, I think it's truly becoming more popular because there's a need for it in the human spirit.
Right, and it's just manifesting on the physical level as people buying more tinctures at the store.
Yeah, or buying,
they're seeing this as the manifestation of the plant spirit in its own form, and then they're wanting to connect with that. But then in the commercial kind of matrix world, you know, that they're seeing that, oh, me purchasing this product is a way of connecting. And in a way, it is an authentic way, because when they take these products that are actually incredibly powerful, and if they're made correctly and organic and wildcrafted with the right intention, we're going to talk about what wildcraft means, then it can be a true, authentic connection to the plant world, the earth spirit, the earth world.
Mm-hmm.
So let's touch on a couple things. So let's explain to the lay person, what is the difference between, like, I'm sure there's low grade herbs out there, just bottom of the barrel, GMO, grown in a vat of toxic chemicals that, you know, produce the toxic Avenger, or God only knows. So like these things are grown, and there is that level of herbs. Is that correct?
I think morally it's more about just low quality, like they're grown on a mass scale. Yes, there's pesticide use. They were dried 2 years ago incorrectly. I know there's, especially in the food market, in culinary herbs, most conventional herbs are irradiated. So pretty much all the nutritional value, and especially like what I would consider energetic value, is fried right out of them. So yeah.
But there is, and then in a lot of these cases, these herbal supplements that are made by these mega big manufacturers that you see at big kind of grocery chains like the dollar store and Walmart and places like that, they don't even really have herbs in them. Is that correct?
Well, you know, I mean, I would say if you go get your ginkgo biloba at, you know, the drugstore,
the dollar store,
or whatever, that there probably is some ginkgo in there. But there's also there is a huge issue with adulteration, and there's herbs that have common names that are different. You know, there might be 3 different completely separate species of herbs that have a similar common name. And so then those are switched out in the trade world. And then you're like, oh, this is, you know, whatever, wood betony, for example, but then it's actually something else.
So the low-grade herbs do exist, it seems like. So you want to avoid those, and you want to look for things. So you're shopping, you're not going to your big chain stores, potentially. You might find them there. They are popping up at the big chain stores.
They are popping up.
Like Trader Joe's and the Kroger-based chains across the country. But it just seems like you really have to look out for the organic, wild-crafted herbs. Now, can you explain to people, what does organic and wildcraft mean in the herbalist world?
Sure. I would say that, you know, your best bet, I mean, if you know, everybody's in a different place with different access to things, if that's, you know, what all you can access and it helps you, great. I would say if you are able to support your local herbalist, if you're able to, you know, find the people who are making things in your area, made from things in your area, that's your ultimate.
Is that what organic and wildcraft mean?
No, sorry, so organic and wildcrafted. So organic would mean, as in certified organic, as with food, that you are growing the herbs without pesticides, herbicides, chemical fertilizers, petroleum products, and the like. So they should be grown with good sun and rain and nutrients, and they're going to have a higher vital force in that kind of growing environment. Wildcrafted means that someone is going out, the harvester is going into a wild area, say up into a meadow where there's a field of yarrow, and they're harvesting that yarrow. There are ways to appropriately and not appropriately wildcraft. And there have been a lot of issues with herbs coming to the brink of endangerment because of over wildcrafting.
So
in
even if
sensitive
it
areas.
says wildcraft on it, if it's
Mhm.
not wildcraft in a way that's sustainable, then it's possible that you may think you're making the right choice, but then at the end of the day, you might actually be making a bad choice. It just really depends on the company. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you can look, I mean, I would say that labels now say sustainably wildcrafted, as, which may, I mean, you can say natural on anything. So who knows if sustainably wildcrafted, but I would say that people who go to that length to put that on their label have that intention. I would say that a lot of people who used to wildcraft are now sustainably cultivating, such as echinacea. There are very few stands of echinacea left in the wild that should be wildcrafted. They should be left for the wild to replenish themselves. And so instead, herb farms have, cropped up all over the country and are now cultivating echinacea so that there can still be a supply without decimating wild populations.
So even in the most conscious aspects in these wonderful companies, including your own, if you're not careful, then and you're not conscious about what you're doing, then you could over harvest just like everything else.
Yeah, exactly. And there's rules about that, that there should be a certain quantity that you see in a stand of herbs and that you should only pick every so other. I mean, there's definitely some sort of, rules written about that in the herbalist community. And there's a wonderful organization called the United Plant Savers.
Okay.
And that was Rosemary Gladstar, who's one of the grandmothers of herbalism in our time. She was a huge part in that. And that's basically a watch group that kind of looks at those herbs that were wildcrafted to the brink of extinction, such as golden seal, echinacea. There's quite a few. And you can go to their website and look and see what herbs are on their watch list for being either at risk or endangered, and kind of what the best practices are for harvesting them. So that's a great resource.
So you're a budding herbalist. So you're a budding herbalist. You want to learn how to do it right. You go to this website.
Yeah, it's United Plant Savers. I think
Okay.
it's yeah.
United Plant Savers.
United Plant Savers.
Probably.
You can also check out the American Herbalist Guild, and they have a ton of resources that can plant you.
Okay, so let's touch on this.
Yeah.
Your company's Vital Force Herbs. Explain
It
the
is.
concept of the vital force.
The vital force. So the vital force to me is, I feel we've been talking about it all along, and it is that light inside of you. It is where human and spirit connect. It's where your internal fire is. It's the part of you that makes you you beyond your name and your face and all of those external features. It's the drive you have inside of you, and it's the seat of your your internal fire that is, the digestive fire, the kind of the seed of everything that makes your life happen.
Would you
for
say it's like the chi? Would you describe it like the chi?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. It's like the chi in Chinese medicine. In Ayurveda, it would be like the solar plexus and that kind of seat of your intestinal fire. And that's what spreads from your core to your periphery. That's what starts in your heart and spreads out to your limbs. It's where you are rooted in the ground and you go on up to the heavens.
So you feel that herbs and herbal medicine should feed this fire. It should increase your vital force.
Absolutely. And I think they definitely do. And herbs have their own vital force. And herbs have, to me, that's one of the just amazing magical things about herbs, is that they hold an intelligence of all the herbs that ever were. I think that, every nettle stand or rose or oak tree holds within its memory all of those, of its species and of everyone it's around, of its whole biome. And so I think that intelligence is there, and it's written into the code, so that when you take nettles, you have that information of the current ecosystem it's grown in and all the history of everything that nettle has ever observed and learned and, evolved. And then that has a coalescence with your own evolution and your own vital force.
So you ingest these herbs, they have their own vital force. They have their cellular memory, we can say, their genetic memory, their spiritual memory, their ethereal memory.
Yes, all of those.
The spirit of these
those
plants,
memories.
the ethereal memory, and they can resonate with your vital force and increase it and heal you in that way. And it works at the core of herbalism is the concept of the vital force and addressing the vital force. Is that correct?
Correct. And I would say, my motto is, for my company, is heal yourself. And I firmly believe that herbs have constituents. They have, magical things they do for your body. Yes, comfrey can actually knit bone tissue together under a microscope. You can see it. However, I think it's so much more than that it's really more stimulating your vital force so that you can heal your bones yourself.
So it's essentially just giving you that energetic boost you need to tap into your own personal healing power.
Yes.
Amazing. Vitalforceherbs.com is the website. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You have a whole bunch of products. You have various blends, each designed to address a specific kind of range of symptoms, or what would you say?
Not symptoms.
Ailments. Sorry, ailments.
Well, yeah, I'll explain.
I don't know.
I'll explain. It's okay. So what I would say is that because herbalism works in such a different way than pharmaceutical medication, is that you don't want to look for symptoms because you're not treating the root. You're covering things up. And while herbs are gentle and are not going to cause the range of side effects you might find in a more intense manufactured drug, they still can change your tissue states. They can still change your energetics. And so say you're a super hot person.
Wait. Let's clarify what that means.
Okay.
Super hot person, because you can go in all different directions.
Okay. So say you are energetically a very warmed up person. You want the air conditioning on. You want to drink iced tea. You wear, flip-flops and a tank top all winter long.
And you could be physically attractive or not.
Or not. Yeah. Either way.
or you could be physically attracted to somebody else. Right?
Exactly.
Oh,
to each their own.
Beholder.
So, yes. So that kind of person who says, oh, wow, I've got this arthritis. That's my symptom is that, I have this achiness in my joints, and I've heard that turmeric is wonderful for this condition. So I'm going to start loading up on this every day. Well, turmeric in its energetic imprint is a very hot, dry herb. So you give a hot, dry herb to a hot, dry person, that's not necessarily going to help your symptom of your arthritis. That actually might aggravate that symptom. So,
interesting.
Yes. So my blends are all they're made in a more gentle tonic type of sense. I do have a lung elixir that will support a cough. I do have a digestive tincture that will support an upset stomach. However, I've tried to balance them in such a way that anyone could take them off the shelf. Disclaimer here, but most anyone could take one, and it's not going to sway you too far one way or the other. It's going to be gentle enough for anyone to say, I'm going to try this out and see how it balances. And my hope is that you'll look at those ingredients and think, wow, I could really taste the fennel in that. I wonder, I feel like it was the fennel that really helped me. And then maybe that will further your curiosity about fennel. And then maybe you'll go down that path and,
Sure. Well, I've noticed with your products, it seems because you do grow them yourself, correct, in your property in Oregon? I do.
I do grow about 80% of what I put into my,
And then where does the other 20% come
The
from?
other 20% are herbs that I cannot grow myself due to just the environment or climate here, or just the space that I have. And so I get those from other reputable herb sources, whether locally or other, places in the country.
I've just noticed that the flavor is dramatic. The feeling, you notice it right away. You feel that plant energy. It seems like you've really put a lot of thought, a lot of care, a lot of understanding, and really applied your knowledge that you've accumulated for so long into these blends. It really shines. And I've noticed, like I said earlier in the podcast, that we talked about how it was crystal infused. So what is crystal infusion in the herbal world, and what is the effect of crystal infusion?
Sure. So crystal infused is something that I came up with because I love rocks and crystals just as much as I love herbs. To me, they're just another intelligent, magical life force on the earth. And I feel like they hold, the cellular memories like we were talking about with plants. They have affinities for different parts of the body, for different, psycho-emotional, spiritual needs. And there is a vein of healthcare that focuses solely on crystal medicine, whether it's the laying of stones on the body or making infusions. So I felt like I really wanted to find a way to add crystals into my herbal medicine as a synergist and also as an amplifier. And so I kind of, I did a lot of research and a lot of experimenting and worked out what I felt would be, generally beneficial for whatever blend I'm using it for.
And it is kind of your own, from what I understand, it is your own proprietary method of infusing the crystal.
For sure. Yeah, I think everybody has their own kind of way of doing it. So, I found the crystals that, some crystals are not safe to actually put in water or whatever formula you're using and ingest. Some should only be done energetically. But I took, what crystals that I felt I generally use, quartz, rose quartz, and amethyst, all in that general quartz family, very safe and very effective at, in herbalism, we have, when you're making formulas, there's a one ingredient you put in there called the driver. And the driver is an herb that's usually more of a pungent, stronger remedy that goes deeper into the blood system into the bloodstream or opens the capillary, something that kind of drives the formula in deeper.
Okay.
And to me, crystals are another type of driver. So they bring the medicine. If you're talking about a heart blend and you have rose quartz in there, and rose quartz is really a quintessential heart remedy in the crystal world, that is really driving that herbal heart medicine deeper and more fully, more of a complete healing to the heart to work with. And also just the amplification. I feel like it brings, just an extra boost to the herbs as well.
Well, we know in any type of situation that, especially in the radio broadcast world, we know that quartz crystals can amplify signals. We know that people that meditate, they meditate with crystals. It seems to amplify their meditation experience, seems to really add on. So they've always been these amplifiers, these resonators.
And record keepers.
And record keepers. And so having those in the blend, so are they actually chunks, or are people going to get a little quartz in their teeth?
Yeah,
or?
You might. Be careful, don't chew too hard. No. No. No, there won't be any physical crystal material left in the final product.
Okay.
No, but there will be that essence in there, and I do feel it's palpable for sure.
So where is the state of herbalism right now? What are some of the trends in herbalism that seem to be developing that you're noticing?
Wow, it changes every week. That's one thing I've noticed about herbalism, especially in the past 10 years, and that seems to be a natural thing as, markets, transportation, digital communication, as all of that increases and the earth seems to get smaller and smaller, then herbs start to come from all over. And that has its pluses and minuses. So I've noticed, that there's often big trends in herbs from the other side of the world. So like there's a lot of Chinese remedies that are coming through, like Schisandra berry seems to be really popular right now. And that's a really unique herb of 5 flavors. If you suck on a dried Schisandra berry, it's like the everlasting gobstopper. It's like you can go through all the different flavors of like sweet, spicy, sour, in this one berry. So, that's really cool. And that's a wonderful driver for lots of formulas. And it has a beautiful essence. So anyways, there's...
So it's wasn't necessarily used in a lot of blends in current herbalism, but you're seeing it pop up in a bunch of different people's blends, a bunch of different people's...
Yeah, I would say like...
treatment plans, and various things.
10 years ago, I'm sure somebody was talking about it, but it wasn't on all the shelves at the grocery stores as it is now. And there's there's so many different things that are like that. I can't even really think to name them, but I think the important thing is that that's going to continue to happen. And there's always, people in our society want new things all the time and they get bored of things. They're like, oh man, echinacea, that's so like last year or last century or whatever. So they're looking for that new edge of like,
I remember echinacea was so big in the late 90s, right? Everybody was like, echinacea.
Echinacea, yes. And we could talk a lot about echinacea but anyways.
Well, one thing I do want to talk about is that you often, you mentioned earlier in the podcast that you felt that all herbs are entheogenic, meaning psychoactive or psychedelic, mind activating, allowing you to tap into those higher frequencies. So what are some of the herbs that that are legal and have those really deep psychoactive effects? I know salvia. Would you consider salvia an herb, or is that a grass?
No, it's an herb. It's in the sage family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Or sage is in the salvia family, however
Okay.
Like the common garden sage is also a salvia. There's a lot of different, I guess I hesitate to say that because I think a lot of those legally available, quote unquote, psychoactive drugs then tend to be used as like, oh, I can, kind of take this herb and have this sort of out of body experience or, whatever. But I think sometimes you miss the point there. I would say definitely salvia is something that's been used by people. There's some more, I would consider them to be more heavy or potentially dangerous, like datura and like kratom. Some of those things that it's like.
So even kratom, which we see in all. Sorry to interrupt you there,
no
but
problem.
you hit a subject. So we see kratom in all these stores. You're driving around, you look around, you see these kratom, and I thought it was kratom for years.
I'm not really sure.
Kratom, kratomo, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but we know what we're talking about. That is also an herb.
Yes.
And we know that does activate opiate receptors in the brain. So there's herbs that activate opiate receptors, but opium's not an herb.
Well, all plants are herbs. An herb is a plant with...
Wait a second. Now I'm confused. So all plants are herbs.
Well, okay.
How do you distinguish a plant and an herb?
Exactly. I would say, how do you distinguish that? I would say, yes, all plants are herbs. But because an herb, I guess it depends on how you define it. You could say that there are culinary herbs, but I could still say this oak tree we keep talking about over here is an herb. It has medicinal properties that would be used by an herbalist in an herbal formula, but it's a tree.
So herbs just really became this classification of the certain spectrum of plants which had outright and obvious medicinal qualities.
Sure.
And then there was ones that maybe had subtle medicinal qualities. They didn't get called herbs. They called like your house plant name.
Yes, or weeds. I've been finding as I weed my medicinal garden and things keep popping up. And I'm like, oh, what is that? Oh, you can't be here. Sorry. This is my calendula bed. You got to go. And then, keeps popping up. And then finally I, start paying closer attention and where it's coming up and start researching and find like, oh, this is such and such, willow herb, and it's related to fireweed, and it does have medicinal properties. And I've been throwing it, into the compost all this time. Or a nasturtium flower, which is peppery, and you put it in your salad, but actually it's a wonderful antioxidant. And
so these things that people defined as weeds could just be herbs. It's
most herbs
it's really
are
interesting.
weeds.
It's just
Yes.
a matter of perception.
Absolutely.
And it's the plant paradigm. It's how these humans perceive the
Yes.
plants, which stacks them into these different categories.
Dandelion
It's
is
a very
classic.
human thing. So these herbs, what we describe as herbs, what we describe as weeds, what we describe as plants, yet again, are just human classifications that humans have created. Humans created these labels.
Yes.
In the plant world, they don't have these labels. They're just plants.
They are
or
just
whatever
plants.
they describe
And
themselves as.
I can't think of a plant that doesn't have polysaccharides, tannins.
Which are what?
Those would be constituents within the plant that may have some medicinal affinity to a organ system in your body. So, say marshmallow has polysaccharides, which are long chain sugar molecules, and those have an affinity to the lining of the gut, with not on their own, but in the synergy of the plant. And so something like that is what I'm saying, is that every plant has some sort of constituent in it that could be considered useful, or having an affinity for or supportive for the human system,
Right.
or the animal system.
Right. So it's
yeah,
there.
It's there. And especially, like, we could talk all day about dandelions. Like, how are dandelions demonized, poisoned, thrown out? And dandelions are one of the most quintessential liver supportive herbs that's out there, and is used in any herbal, any liver formula. 99% of them have dandelion.
I happen to like
I
dandelions.
love
I didn't
dandelion.
understand their medicinal qualities, but I will say that, hey, who doesn't love dandelions? But when I was a kid, what did I do? I had my lawnmower. I just mowed right over those things.
Yep.
Sorry, dandelions. I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Well, dandelions are pretty free and abundant around here, so
So you see these compounds in nature like nicotine and DMT, and they show up all these different places. They also show up in the herbal world. All these constituents, compounds that we would consider psychoactive, psychedelic.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So you could, in effect, through various blends of herbs, you find the right ones that have certain effects, you could recreate a highly powerful, potent psychedelic experience, potentially. What do you think about that? Is that possible?
I think it's definitely possible. For sure. You could also have an extreme psychedelic experience sitting with a chamomile plant. It's true. But like I said, some speak louder than others. So yeah, if you were looking for that rocket to the moon experience, yes, absolutely. There are, I feel, plants that would take you there.
I prefer rockets to the moon. The subway and the train just don't get me there fast enough.
You'd be surprised, though, I have to say, what you could learn from
No, I
sitting
like
with
it
a
all.
chamomile
I
plant.
love chamomile. I
or
love
what have you.
oatmeal. I love a lot of
Oats,
different.
you wanted to talk a little bit about some restorative
Well,
plants.
yeah, we
We'll
did
get
talk
there,
before
but
the show. Well,
oats,
here's
yeah.
the thing. Okay, let's touch on this a little bit. Right now, we want to, as humans, it seems like, as our population's growing, as all these new afflictions, we'll say, seem to be manifesting, we want to boost our immune system. Our goal as humans right now is to boost our immune systems to the max. What are some of the herbs that you recommend that would boost a human being's immune system?
So I wish that question was super easy. Like, here's a Band-Aid, or take this teaspoon of this.
But it's always about the synthesis and then based on the person specifically.
Yes, it's based on personal energetics, and it's based on your entire picture of your habits and your, everything that you do. If you could take an immune boosting herb all day long, and if you don't sleep at night and you only eat potato chips, then echinacea's not really going to get you very far, or whatever we're talking about. So I think it's looking at the whole picture of your being, not just taking immune boosting herbs. However, I will say that there are some things that are great for, daily tonic use, ways to just build up your system. And I think it's important to kind of really study yourself before you start working with an herb regimen to kind of figure out what you need.
What do you mean study yourself? Because I look in the mirror in the morning.
And you study yourself.
Well, I spend quite a lot of time making sure I look beautiful and just appreciating myself. And
That's a good healthy practice.
it's a good healthy quality.
That's the first step to the immune system, actually. So you're on the right track.
Exactly. So what else? What are we really talking about?
So we're
here?
talking about looking at what makes you feel good, and not just feel good in the moment. You know, you talked about opiate receptors. In plants, there's opiate receptors in wheat, and so that might make you feel good, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to make you healthy to just eat more bread products, right? So what I'm talking about is are you getting enough sleep, looking at what you eat every day. And even what you eat every day, I can't say that salad all day every day is good for you and you and you, because if you're a really cold person and
cold temperature wise.
Cold temperature wise. Yes, of course. Yes. What they would say in Ayurveda, Vata type constitution, someone who's more thin, maybe more nervous personality, cold, not a lot of, meat on the bones. That person eating cold raw salads every day is actually going to make themselves have a less functional immune system. So, so that's why it's hard to prescribe, not even prescribe. We don't use that word in herbalism, but hard to recommend any kind of, specific dietary or otherwise thing. But I would say make sure you eat what makes you feel healthy. Make sure you sleep however you need to. And then there are a lot of nutritive herbs out there, which I think are more important than immune boosting herbs, such as nettles. Has a ton of micronutrients in there, calcium, magnesium, iron, manganese.
So the goal to boosting the immune system is boosting your nutritional.
Yes, absolutely. And that includes your elements, getting sunshine, getting fresh air, getting clean water, getting elements from the earth.
Such as iodine.
Yes.
For people that don't know yet on the show, I'm a very big proponent of iodine. I love this person, his name, I love a lot of people, but I love this specific doctor. His name's Dr. Brownstein, drbrownstein.com.
Oh, yeah, Dr.
And
Brownstein.
he's pretty amazing, and he's the leading expert on thyroid. He'll tell you all about iodine, way more than I ever could.
Iodine is very important. And
critical.
Yeah. So getting all of those critical elementals, I will call them, I think we're made from elements, and I think that we need daily elemental nutrition. It's very, especially in the last few years, has come to be a very core understanding of health for me. So looking at that, so things like nettles that are very nutritive, oats, which is what you might make your oatmeal out of, but there's a certain stage when the oats are growing called the milky oat stage, and the oats exude a latex, which actually coats your nervous system. So that's really wonderful for stress and burnout and just basically the fast-paced society that we live in. So things like that can be super helpful. Things like rose hips or any of those sour type herbs, rose hips, hawthorn berries, hibiscus, things that have that bright red color and sourness will also have a high vitamin C content and often zinc, bioflavonoids, and other things that are very helpful to the immune system. Lemon balm is a great nervine that I think is a wonderful immune booster, as well as a mood booster, as well as, it's a panacea. You could really just have lemon balm with you and come out okay. So I think that's a great great one to look into.
A little goes a long way. You find some of these herbs that are nutritive and some that are beneficial in a general sense.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not like as specific as a person might need, but they come through in a general sense. That's what you actually need to boost it.
That's what I think. And then I think there's things you can do to, I think if you start getting a scratchy throat or start feeling achy, I think that also taking those high nutritives with some of the pungent herbs that are aromatic and volatile, which means they have a lot of essential oil content, not advocating ingesting essential oils on their own, but so having a cup of hot water with lemon and ginger in it is extremely valuable when you feel like your immune system is low. There's kind of been a fire cider revival as fire cider went through some legal issues recently with one particular company trying to patent it rather than it being a family recipe passed down, which it has been for generations. So now that that's kind of over, people are really, that there's this rekindle of, fire cider. And that's a lot of your pungent herbs that are really going to boost that internal fire, which is then boosting your whole immune system response.
Back to the vital force.
Yes, exactly. You got to feed your vital force, kindle the fire, and that's the old home remedies of hot chicken soup. Well, that chicken soup was full of garlic, onions, thyme, oregano, rosemary, all of those highly volatile aromatic herbs in them. And then, get under a bunch of covers and have your hot lemon ginger tea. I mean, that's actually a really great recipe for boosting your immune system. And also going to bed when you feel sick instead of going back to work is a huge thing.
So a lot of these foods that we eat that we have classified as humans as these foods, we look at potatoes, we look at onions, we look at garlic as foods. They're aromatic herbs.
Absolutely.
And they're healing and curing you, in certain situations through the food, these dishes that you're eating, chicken soup, whatever that has these nutritive, restorative effects. You're not looking at this as an herbal tea. A medicinal
or a medicine, like I need my chicken soup prescription or my, I don't need to go down the store and buy the bottle. It's about those, those herbs that have that vital force in them to, boost your immune system. But go ahead. I just wanted to say that I also think that there's a difference, I think right now, especially there's this huge push for it that, it's, in our recent history of the medical world and healthcare has been to dissect and pull apart all the body systems down to the nano level, right? That we pull apart the arm, we pull apart the brain, we pull apart all these different things. And that, I think, initially started out as a way to figure out how it works. You want to figure out all the parts of a car, you take it apart, you check out the motor, all these things, you put it back together. Now you know how the car works, right? I think that in our human history right now, we've gone through a few hundred years now of taking the body apart, especially in the wave of our latest technological leaps where we're really taking things apart down to this teeny tiny microscopic level. And now I think that's part of why humans are coming back to herbs and why we're seeing this is that there is a need. We've picked it apart. We're good. We know what's in the layers. And I know there's still research that's happening on how the brain works. And I think a lot of that is really more about the mystery that science isn't ever going to figure it out. But anyway, that's another story. So I think that I lost my whole train of thought.
It's okay.
Help me.
No,
Where was I? I'm
okay.
swimming in a sea of thoughts.
It's okay. Let's just touch on the history of herbalism.
Yes.
So in the past, herbalists have been persecuted. I mean, these are the witches of old. These are the people that were burned at the stake.
Yeah.
And then you look back at these women that were accused, and a lot of these were just your basic herbalists. They weren't doing anything else except for just making medicinal concoctions and responding to people's needs when they were requesting these remedies.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of that, they were killed.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I've got that, but now I remembered what I was going to say. I just want to finish it because that was a long train to nowhere. Okay, so what I was just trying to say is that, so we've picked everything apart into this immune system like it's this separate train car, but really I think what I'm talking about with boosting your immune system and what we need to work on is that our immune system is one facet of this whole orchestra of our body. And that it's actually okay to get sick sometimes because your body is learning, and that there's a whole orchestra between us and our ecosystems. We have tons of bacteria, viruses, funguses living in all of our body parts and our eyelashes, our intestines, everywhere. And it's about the synergy and the dance between those, not that we need to fire up the immune system to kill the pathogens. And that if we look at it in a little bit of a different light, and find the communication between the species of the virus and the human or whatnot, that we sort of see it a little differently and can then work on it on a different level.
Interesting. That's a really interesting perspective. I'm glad you were able to cap that off. For those that are listening, you've got the complete picture now.
Okay, so witches.
What else can
Back
we
to
talk
witches.
about? We the history. Well, we just want to touch on that a bit
Yeah,
because
sure.
we want people to realize that this is what these women and mostly women back in the day, but also men were practicing these things, and this is what they were persecuted for by, at the time, the Catholic Church, but other churches as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, herbalism itself has been demonized by religious culture, would you say?
Yeah, I would say as well. And I think a lot of that has to do with externalizing power rather than that you have the power within yourself to heal yourself. You have the power within you to heal your family member. You have all of that at your disposal with the intelligence of the earth that, religion and, whatever the structures may be will, the power structure is external. They want you to not have that inside yourself so much, but to seek it from an outside source. So if everyone's an herbalist, and then maybe they don't need to believe in those religious tenets, or maybe they don't need to believe in that particular,
Train of thought. So
Train of
herbalism's
thought.
a gateway drug in a way.
it's such a gateway drug.
Herbalism is a gateway.
I was telling you about chamomile earlier. It is a serious gateway drug.
Herbalism is the path to higher thinking, you think? Maybe it's one of the
Absolutely.
paths.
Yeah.
One doorway for
It
some
is
people.
a path that you could take and definitely find yourself there. And that was something I was starting to say at the very beginning when I was saying that Western herbalism kind of took a break. When we talk about Ayurveda and, Chinese medicine and some of the Eastern traditions that are thousands of years old, and they have much more complex systems at looking at how the body works and all the synergies between the systems. And they never went through that persecution period of time where they had to go underground. So Ayurveda has been studied out in the open with the population for thousands of years. So
with
they've
no
made
impedance,
so
no
they've made
blocking.
Yes, they've been able to observe, evolve, innovate, all of those things. Whereas in the Western world, herbalism had to go deep underground for a long time. And so it's really coming back now, but we've seen a few different renaissances, I would say, in this Western period of time.
So do you
yeah.
feel that the Ayurvedic form is the most advanced form of herbalism because of the fact that they were able to study it for longer with no obstructions, with no impedance?
I would definitely say it has that quality for sure. I don't know if there's one that's the most, but I would say that given its ability to thrive and flourish and grow and evolve with the population and the plants through, this whole period of time, through thousands of years, that, there's a lot more, they've made a lot more headway.
So what happened in history? Maybe it's okay if you don't know this, but I'm just curious if you know what happened when people started comparing notes, when the Ayurvedic people started meeting with the Chinese herbalists, and then, were they able to compare and contrast notes? Were they able to, kind of amend each other's situations and understandings? What do you know about that, if anything?
I do know that from what I have learned, that all traditions of herbalism have the basic common threads. They pretty much are all saying the same thing in different ways, with different languages, with slightly different, there's some herbs that Ayurveda would say are warming, that Chinese medicine would say are cooling, that Western medicine might, agree with one side or the other, but you have to look at why, and then it all comes around as being the same thing. Chinese calls it cooling because it has this effect upon the liver that ends in a net cooling effect, whereas the other tradition might say it's warming because of this and that, but they end up kind of at the same end, if that makes sense. And so they've kind of come to, I think all the traditions have come to agree that they're pretty much talking about the same thing, and have very similar ideas about humanity and the
how
plant
herbs
world
work.
and how herbs work and all that.
So is there a new form of herbalism which combines all the information from all the various herbal traditions?
A new kind of herbalism.
Or is there been like modern forms of herbalism that have adapted all these?
Well, sure. I think, I mean, there are traditions. I mean, I would say right now, I think that one that's really coming around, that's bridging all the old traditions together and taking into account newer things, is the vitalist tradition. And that's definitely what I find that resonates most with me. And the vitalist tradition is looking at all the things we've talked about, that you're looking at the individual energetics of the person, you're looking at the environment, you're looking at, the whole picture and holistically building something, and that no two plants are alike and no two people are alike, and that you build it from there. And I think that that's one of the things that runs true in all traditions, that we've been able to kind of put into our modern herbalist tradition.
Interesting. So, we're about at 1:15. We still got about 20 minutes left. So I just curious, what are your thoughts about the future of herbalism, and what are some of the things that you feel like you want people to know to help them embrace herbalism more? People that are a little standoffish, maybe they're used to, their paradigm has told them that conventional medicine is the way to go.
Sure.
But they're seeking, they're listening to Midnight on Earth. They're loving my voice. They're loving your laugh. They're loving us together. What do you feel like you could tell them to make the herbalism, the herbal medicine situation, all of that more palatable, more able to be understood?
Sure. I would say, I think the best thing to do is to start small and start with something that you have a connection to, something that grows in your yard, or something that, the tea that you and your grandparent used to have together, something that really resonates with you. And it could be one of your cooking herbs. It could be that you really love cloves. So dig into cloves. That's a medicinal herb. Dig into rosemary. And I think it can be really helpful to work with one herb at a time, especially when you're first beginning. And if you're not sure kind of how you're feeling about it, is just pick one and have it as a tea, have it as a tincture, have it under your pillow, smell it, grow it, and just see what you learn from it. And I think that's a really simple and beautiful way to start. And as far as the future of herbalism, I think what I'm seeing, I've heard some people feel concerned and cautious that herbalism is going down the path of conventional medicine, that it's trying to be standardized and modernized and, put in little bottles, and that every bottle of nettles will be the same and kind of like that. But I think that ultimately what I'm seeing is quite the opposite. I'm seeing that there are more DIY herb programs than ever. You can go to pretty much any city and find some apothecary or co-op or some kind of grocery store that will have at least a small selection. You can buy herbs online from all over the country, all over the world now. So the access to the herbs themselves and the access to the information of what to do and how to experiment is vast and growing every single day. There are 40 different programs I can think of off the top of my head on how to make your own lip balm with herbs, or how to make your own elderberry syrup or fire cider. So that's where I see that the herbs are going back where they started, which is into the hands of people.
So let's say somebody really wants to be an herbalist. They're attracted to this. They're loving the concepts. They want to delve into herbalism more. Where would you point them?
Well, I would first put your feelers out into your local community and see, what apothecaries are in your community, what they're
That have classes maybe.
Sure. Most of the apothecaries, I mean, I know the ones here in Portland do have classes on, how to make your own stuff or learn about, what elderberry syrup is all about. And there's lots of online classes. I would say that, do you want me to be specific about places?
Sure,
to go?
sure. I mean,
Okay.
if there's schools out there, if there's places that you recommend that a person that's charting a path towards herbalism,
Sure.
that they just check out. You don't want to endorse anything.
I'm not
not
endorsing anyone.
anything.
Well, I would
But,
just say, like, a super general place to start. I mentioned this before, but the American Herbalist Guild has a resource on their website.
Oh, there
that
we go.
lists-
American Herbalist Guild.
They list I won't say all, because I'm sure that there may be some that are haven't been discovered yet or just aren't on there for whatever reason, but herb schools and courses. And there's a ton of online courses and, in whatever city you live in. So that's a great place just to find out what's out there. You might be surprised at how many herb colleges and courses are actually out there. So that's a great place. There's some really good home study courses. Rosemary Gladstar has a course, the Art and Science of Herbalism. And then there's another one called Learning Herbs, which is really great. They have like a really big online community where you can, join. I think it's a few dollars a month, and then you can ask questions, endless questions to the forum. And they have lots of little classes on, how to make your own syrup here, how to do this. They have board games for kids. If you're interested in kids herbalism, there's, I believe it's called Herbal Root Zine. That is really wonderful for kids. And then I guess I would say for delving in deeper, there's the School of Evolutionary Herbalism, and that is bridging herbalism, alchemy, and astrology. So if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, that's
kind of like Neapolitan ice cream.
Yes.
It's chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry.
Absolutely. That's the path I've taken, and it's definitely a rabbit hole, and I feel like I'm still on the edge of the cliff. So
Cool. So
yeah.
amazing. And it seems like all of these places that you just described and these schools, they're all easy to find online.
Absolutely. Yep.
They're out there.
Mhm.
You're not going to have to do too much digging. Basic search engine search will take you where you need to go. So you have your website, Brynn Anderson, Vital Force Herbs, www.vitalforceherbs.com. You can order her products. You can also get consultations with her, I believe. So she'll evaluate your life from an herbalist perspective and maybe look at the health needs and deficiencies you have and figure out how to boost your vital force.
Absolutely.
I'm learning. Look at this. I'm learning. We're learning together here on Midnight Earth. Midnight on Earth. The audience, the host, the guest. We're always learning. We're learning together.
Absolutely. And
so you plan on expanding this? You see yourself in grocery stores nationwide in 10 years? Where do you see Vital Force Herbs going with your business?
yeah, definitely. I'm definitely on the precipice of a big growth for sure. I want herbs to be accessible to everyone, and I want really, as an herbalist, I feel like we are the hands and feet of herbs. So the oak tree may not be able to walk over to you, even if it sees that you need it, but I might be able to bring it to you through that intelligence. So that's something that I feel like is my primary purpose as an herbalist, and something that I see in the growth of Vital Force Herbs is that my service is that I want to really help everyone to increase their own vital force, their own healing potential, and to bring the plants to the people that need them, and so that they can marry those forces together. And that's my purpose, and that's definitely why I feel like growing my company would be a great choice.
Yes, so you're getting your name out there. You're spreading the energy of the plants. So in a sense, you're saying you feel like you're this conduit for the plant consciousness for the average person. They're coming to the plant consciousness, earth consciousness through you, through your company. That's your service.
Yes, absolutely. And that goes with what we talked about earlier about quality, is that I would like there to be high quality herbs for people to be able to access. Crystal infused. I feel like everyone should have access to high frequency medicine.
Okay. And it seems like you're doing it. You have your website.
I do.
You have your
website.
company. You're based in Portland, Oregon. It's incredible products. We've got 10 minutes to go. We're in the final 10 minutes. This is our time let's just say this is our time this episode for the deepest possible thoughts. So let's hear what is the mission of plants and herbalism on Earth, and what message do you want to leave people with as we close out our final 9 minutes?
Whoa, that's a big question. So
you got 9 minutes to flesh it out.
I got 9 minutes. Plants.
What is the mission of plants? Like, what are their purposes to heal, their purposes to feed?
Absolutely. I think plants are here for themselves and for all the other facets of the earth, not just for humans. I think that it's all this amazing, living, breathing, pulsing organism that all works in synergy together. And I think that plants are an integral part of that. And when plants, I'm going to recommend an author, Stephen Herod Buhner, The Secret Teachings of Plants. Amazing book on the more spiritual, ethereal relationship of humans and plants.
Is this the secret life of plants, or is this the secret teachings of plants? Because I've read a book and seen a documentary called The Secret Life of Plants, where they did things like experiments where they hooked up heads of lettuce to an EKG machine.
Yeah.
The guy chops the head of lettuce, leaves the room, comes back, all the heads of lettuce that are still alive just start freaking out. That was a secret life of plants. So you're saying there's another book, The Secret Teachings of Plants.
Secret Teaching. And he has several books. He has Plants in the Imaginal Realm. Look up Stephen Herod Buhner. You'll see all of his titles. I don't want to get any of the title names wrong, but amazing perspective on plant consciousness and sort of, the role of plants, the role of Gaia, and looking at how humans, are part of that greater facet of the world, or of the earth, I should say. I think that we're here to co-evolve. And one thing, I guess the reason I was mentioning his name is that he talks about the huge jump in the consciousness of the earth when plants came about, that there was this organization of cells that then, organized that, there's these particles, and then they organize into cells, and then they organize into molecules, and that, on and on and on. And that at some point there was this, decision for the plant world to pop into the into the history of the earth. And, we don't have written access to what that looked like, but just that jump in what it took and the intelligence that plants have as far as the way they communicate with other species around them, the way that they're constantly changing with their environment. Plants are always, they're always flexible. Plants are so flexible. If one little thing with the weather happens, one little thing with their environment happens, there's more foxes this year, there's more voles this year, there's more snow this year, there's more sun this year, they have the ability to constantly adjust, and that takes a serious intelligence. And then that has evolved since that, that time. And so I think they have a lot to teach humans. I think that we have a lot of that already inside of us. It's just more of an awakening. I think we have all that knowledge already, and that intelligence and that magic and mystery inside of us. I think plants are a key to helping us unlock, what's already inside of us. And then we move to a whole different kind of earth.
Well, I'm on board. Sign me up. And Plants have done so much for me as a person that has grown cannabis in the past. I was an herbalist. You know, cannabis growers out there, I bet you didn't know that in a way you're an herbalist. Plants have taught me so much. And I know that the people listening now realize that even coffee is psychoactive. All these different things that are in our environment are incredibly psychoactive, and they've done so many amazing things for us. So we really owe a lot to the plant world, not just for sustenance in a physical sense, but for all the developmental gifts and various beneficiary situations that the plants have provided for humanity. I mean, pain relief. I mean, you just go down the list. I mean, we really owe a lot to the spirit of the plants and to the earth, to the planet, to the earth that we live on. So, Brynn Anderson, I have a question. As we grow this podcast, you know, we want to touch base with people that are very proficient in certain subjects. We'd love to talk to you again sometime soon. Get the herbalist perspective on various world events, various subjects. One question I would actually, this is going to be an interesting question as we run into our last 5 minutes here, is that what do you think the power of herbs would be that are grown on other planets, or as we expand out into the universe, the herbs that we find on other planets that are exclusive to those planets? How will that affect herbalism?
Wow. Well, that'll be a whole new frontier. I mean, if you look at how I think nature works with the microcosm and the macrocosm, that the spiral starts in the center and goes outward, I think it's probably just another level, another octave of our human evolution. I think that we
to integrate those outer space plants, those like galactic plants.
Yeah, I mean, that's just to think about that kind of possibility. I think
the
that
galactic plants will contribute to our human evolution.
Why not?
Universal plant
I mean,
life.
why not? If you think of how, plants from Europe, were then, came to this country, or
North
how
America,
Chinese
right.
medicine, yes, North America. How, I mean, we've swapped herbs all over the world and broadened our knowledge and changed our formulas and learned all kinds of things. So that would just be another.
And it would just then
jump.
broaden our perspective of the plant consciousness. It's just would be this universal plant field of consciousness that expands out into the universe as we find these plant life.
That sounds pretty amazing.
And other life, on these other planets.
Sure. And I think, plants definitely resonate and have a resonance with their area. I mean, there's plants that are endemic to only certain little pockets of the entire world, or the planet Earth world. And so, that's got its own vibe. And then there's plants that you can find all over the earth, and that has its own different vibe. So there may be plants that we find in other reaches of the galaxies that we actually have on Earth. Who knows? Maybe it's a different species of arnica or dandelion or whatnot that's, similar function, similar basic signature, but that's the Mars version or the, Andromeda version, whatever.
Right.
And then there's plants that may be endemic to those places that will bring their own signature, that will have something different to teach us.
And then you start crossbreeding them, and you get
Whoa.
the hybrid, the Martian herbs, the Venusian herbs, the intergalactic herbs fused with our good old Earth herbs.
Right.
You
Well,
know.
and if you talk about planets, then that's the whole. There's the rabbit hole beginning.
All right.
Planets
Well,
and plants. And
we just want to say thank you so much for being here. Yet again, your website is vitalforceherbs.com. Your name is Brynn Anderson. We're going to talk to you more. And thank you so much, I guess, for being here.
yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
All right. Well, on that note, I guess we're just going to say, see you next episode.
All
and
right.
tell a friend.